that was a really beautiful way to describe the Challenge B year. And so the first semester is a lot similar. It's going to feel very familiar to your Challenge A year. A lot of the material seems to kind of be like with Latin, it's repeated a little bit, and the structure and the flow is sort of repeated a little bit. And so your students will gain a lot of confidence through that first semester of Challenge B. Because they're recognizing what's familiar, they're feeling it, and they're like, hey, I got this and I'm doing well, and kind of. And then the second semester of B takes kind of is ramping up. And so, second semester of B is, I just always tell my parents as a director, just, put your seatbelt on and get ready. It moves fast. And a lot of the curriculum changes. So, we're going to have a first semester set and then a second semester set. And you'll see that as you look in your catalog there. So, we'll start with the logic. And so logic it has been the Saxon pre-algebra in the past, but this year it'll start the math map monomials. So if you've been doing the math map, if you're currently have a student enrolled in Challenge A, then you're getting some understanding of how the math map works in community so well. And so that's going to flow right into your Challenge B year as well. So I won't spend a whole lot of time on that just because that's kind of new to everybody, and we're going to get more information and more through practicum. We'll be learning more about the math map, and through a bunch of Krista's things she's doing mathematic map at home and things like that, we'll learn a little bit more about that. But just know that you're going to be working through the math map there in logic. So grammar is Henley. And so you're going to use the same books in Challenge B that you used in Challenge 1. Or Challenge 1. Challenge, well, you will in Challenge 1 too. Challenge A. So you will use the same one. So the same Latin blue book, the same purple book. And everything you learned in Challenge A is going to be squeezed into the first semester. So I like to say it's really similar to essentials. We're just layering that learning on. So where we had the in Challenge A, we kind of moved a lot slower as they were learning the grammar and learning a lot of the vocabulary. Now we're going to pick up, and it's going to be the same thing again, but we're just moving at a much faster pace. So again, your student's going to feel that mastery feeling, and it's going to feel really good for both mom and student. And then in the second semester, they're going to move into a new portion of Henley, same book, but the new kind of go farther in the Henley book. And it's going to be, the main focus is going to be on verbs. So they're going to get into verb moods and kind of start that whole process. And they're going to spend time really understanding verbs in the second semester in the grammar portion. And then for research, again, keep in mind, we've got semester 1 and semester 2 in Challenge B. Okay, so for semester 1, you're going to be going through the history of astronomy. And this is a really, really fun, most students really love this strand. And so each week, they're going to be given a particular astronomer to learn, and they start way back in the early, and then move on. And so each one is designed a little bit different. And so really students who really thrive with creative processes, like if they love to, to express themselves creatively, they're going to really love this. So sometimes it's going to be, doing a keyword outline and writing a paper, but a lot of times there's one that's you get to do a board and kind of draw or paint or do whatever you want with that. There's one particular one where they do the geocentric model. Nolan did one where he made them all out of foam balls, and he put them all on my Lazy Susan that sat on my kitchen table. And I had a student who did one in a cake form. I had a student who did one in Lego form. So that's really fun. There's also other some astronomy project where you do Nolan did a like, what was that? Like a,
For which one?
for the one where you interviewed your brother.
Oh yeah, I did a podcast.
Oh yeah, he did it in the form of a podcast. So he wrote it out, and he interviewed his brother as the scientist. Obviously, you couldn't see him; you could just hear him, and he was the interviewer. And so that's how he did that one. And so it's really fun. So they'll have one scientists a week that they're studying. And I do want to say that just a couple resources that are really, really helpful. And Chris is going to go back into that. But if you have never used CC's famous science cards, famous scientist cards, this would be a really good investment for you to think about purchasing. Some of the scientists are very difficult to find with resources from the library because they're so old. And so because of that, these are going to be really helpful in your research. So think, that's been a good purchase. Some other books that are helpful. This one is one that Nolan likes a lot. It's called The Astronomy Book, and it has some of the same astronomers that you're looking at. This is by DK Publishing. We went ahead and bought this because I have 5 sons going to go through it, but I think you can also get this at the library. But that's a really helpful book to find and to kind of have on your person, because unless you want to be taking your child to the library every week, or you want to go every week, then having these on your bookshelf and having the science cards from CC will help, because you're going to have to be, researching somebody every week. And then for the second semester, it is what they call Origins, which is a really, really fun strand, or a part of the strand that discusses creationism. Were you going to say something, Nolan? No. Okay. Creationism versus Darwinism or evolution. And so they read a book called Defeating Darwinism. I think Nolan has it over there. And they read that, and notate it. And they use How to Make a Mark on a Book, which is, he'll show you. There you go, in his. And this is a really, really good prep for Challenge 1 and other years of challenge. I can tell you, my oldest is in Challenge 2. So make sure that you're spending time doing this, because you will be thankful and grateful as your child goes through his challenge years that you spent the time annotating like you should have on Defeating Darwinism. And then they will go through just discussion in class. So there's no papers needed with this. They won't write papers or anything like that. They're just going to read the material, take notes, learn to annotate, and then they'll discuss it in class. Okay. So that is for 10 weeks of the second semester. And then the last 5 weeks of the Challenge B second semester, they're going to be doing, and obviously Nolan hasn't started this yet, so I still have the cellophane on it, but it's discovering atomus. Some people say autonomous or atomos. I don't know, whatever. I say atomus. This is a book that CC produces, and it is a consumable workbook. It's 3 hole punched, and so the students will actually write in it and keep notes in it and stuff like that. And really what it is, it's a gentle intro into the grammar of chemistry, and then they're going to be working through the periodic table. And then the properties of the atoms too, but that's basically the goal. And so this is it sounds very, very stressful. This is actually very resting. So the last 6 weeks, they're in the thick of mock trial, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute. They're in the thick of a lot of other things. And so this actually is a pretty resting kind of part of the strand, and all of my students really enjoyed it. They've already done a lot of the memorizing of the periodic table if they've been in CC Foundations program, and so they're just working on memorizing the rest of them. And so it's really, so don't let that scare you. I will give you this tip as mom, just a mom tip. I would not wait to order this. It's not very expensive, and what I found as a director is a lot of parents would place their order in the summer, but they would leave this off thinking, oh, I'll go back and order it later. And they would either forget, or it would be something would be back ordered because all of the other moms are about to go into Challenge B would be ordering it. So go ahead and just put it in your cart, keep it in a box or something. Hopefully you'll be able to find it for the last 5 weeks of your Challenge B year. So that's my little mom tip for that one. So that's all for research. And then let's see. Okay, next is reasoning. So reasoning is logic, formal logic. So we start with informal logic in the first semester. And let's see, what did I say about that one? That one is, yeah, like where did those books go on? Do you have them?
I have my second semester.
You have your
but I
second
don't have
semester
my
book?
first
Okay, I don't know where the first semester book went. I had it in here. I think it's in this box. Anyway, the first semester, you go through the first book, and then the second semester, you go into the formal logic with the symbolic logic. So everything they kind of learned in the first semester, they're building on in the second semester. Now, in Challenge A, reasoning was our resting strand. That is not the case for Challenge B. So this is a place where most students I have found, um, if their brain does not work in a very logical way, then this is going to be difficult for them to kind of take on. So my encouragement to you would be two things. I would say, um, really speak with your director if your student struggles with this strand, and just learn how to kind of keep up with the class, but at the same time take it a little bit slower, so they're gaining kind of an understanding of what they're doing. And the other thing is just an encouragement that this is an extremely helpful strand. It seems difficult, and it is difficult. But learning this now, you will be amazed when they start ACT testing, when they start prepping for all of that, when they get into Algebra 2, all of these things in the future, they're going to be tapping back into what they learned in this strand. And so it's a beautiful curriculum, and it's very well done. It's just not easy. They're going to have to learn to do hard things. So stick with it, because it really will yield some beautiful fruit in that. But so that is what our reasoning strand is. All right, exposition. So exposition, they through the first semester, they go through Lost Tools of Writing again, and they do their persuasive essays again, just like they did in Challenge A. So they are reading good books. They read The Phantom Tollbooth, Little Britches, Where the Red Fern Grows, The Hiding Place, and Tanglewood Tales. All right, and so they're doing the same thing that they've been doing. Feels very familiar. We actually start back at essay model number 2 in the LTW book. We don't go back to that first one that's like super simple. They start at essay 2 model, and they keep walking through. So again, it's just that mastery idea, and they're just writing, doing their Annie charts, doing exactly like what they did in Challenge A. And then the second semester we change, and we go into the short story. And so short story is really, really fun. They work through, can you hand me your short story book there, bud? Uh, they work through the short story book. Oh, did you forget it? It's at your desk. We can go get it. So that short story book is it is not an optional resource. You know how in Challenge A, some of you may have bought the children's literature book that's a required text, and I always have parents say, I never used it. Okay, that may or may not have been true for you. You need the short story book. You will use it, and it is required for a reason. So make sure you buy that one. So they'll read different short stories by famous authors that they're eventually going to read through other years of challenge. They're going to read longer works by these same authors. The short story book also walks them through how to, there it is. Thanks, bud. It looks like this. It has a funny little man on it. How to write their short story. Okay. And so they'll spend the entire rest of their semester writing their short story. And at the end, they'll turn that into their director. And most directors put that all into an anthology that's then printed like a little book for the kids that has all of their book stories in it. So it's really cool keepsake for them. And I have two encouragements about that. The first one would be it's very similar to science fair. I know some of you probably just got done with science fair. So my encouragement is do exactly like you did in science fair. If you don't get behind, the guide just takes little bit by little bit by little bit to build the short story. And as long as you're working through each week like you should be, this will be fine. They're going to write it. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be fun. And most students really, really enjoy it. In fact, I haven't had a student yet that hasn't enjoyed it. The other thing that I would say is for you, I didn't say this on the last call because I thought about it later, but for you moms that are in the thick of essentials right now with your younger students, this book is actually really helpful. The way that it talks about how to write a short story and it builds, it shows you a triangle and it has all of the different types of a story and all of those things. That can be really helpful for some of the weeks of IW. So don't just give this to your student and never look at it, because you may be able to find some helpful stuff in here for you if you've got kids in essentials. So that's my other mom tip for that. All right, and then debate. The first semester is kind of technically the resting strand for Challenge B. We go through this book right here. It's called The American Storybook Experience. And each week, your students will read two pretty short little essays on different American people and famous Americans whose actions shaped, I have that written down, a nation. That's the little tagline. And so they'll read through two stories. And then in class, we discuss, like, what is a hero? We discuss, were these people heroic? Why were they heroic? We teach them how to use a comparison chart. And some of them have kind of understand that in Challenge A with LTW, but we really get into it really well in this, which sets them up beautifully for debate in Challenge 1. So this is a really, really cool way to kind of ease them into that idea of thinking between two sides of an argument, dealing with people and issues. And so that's what the first semester is. And the second semester is our very fun, and I'll go ahead and do the next slide because it is our capstone event for Challenge B, which is our mock trial. And mock trial is just the best. I'll tell you, I could go on and on, but I'll tell you the reason I love it. The main reason I love it is because mock trial takes every skill that your child has ever gained through their CC years. I mean, from 4 to now, and it puts it on display, and it allows you to see the growth and the beauty, and it is so awesome. And so the students work all semester on creating a case, learning the legal system, learning their roles and parts, and then they present a mock trial in front of a real judge and jury. And that is usually done outside of CC on a different CC day or a different day than your CC campus. And they'll argue one side and then they'll flip and argue the other side, is the way that most campuses do it. And so it is just, yeah, it's awesome. It is also a very disciplined process, but there is a lot of beauty and joy that comes from it. And my son, actually my Challenge 2 son, is he is headed, believes the Lord wants him in law school, and that is where he is headed. And that all, a love from that all came out of the Challenge B mock trial. And so he had never really known much about law, didn't really understand anything about it. And through the mock trial, he caught a fire for the love of justice and the justice system, and believes the Lord wants him in law. And so it's really a really cool experience. In fact, another friend of mine, though, I'll say that about my one son with the law, another friend of mine, her son felt called to the ministry after he finished mock trial. He got up and was a lawyer, a defense lawyer for one, and delivered the ending, the closing arguments. And after that was on a Friday, and on that Sunday, he felt God called him to be a pastor and proclaim the scripture and the word as he had done in his mock trial. So anyway, those are just two cool things, how God can use the mock trial in your kids' lives, just to give them confidence and just to really, do what he desires to do with them. So yeah, that is, oops, I think I went the other way, didn't I? All right. Now we're to the student perspective. So I'm going to interview Nolan here and ask him questions. All right. So what excited you most coming into Challenge B?
Short story. I was really looking forward to short story, and it definitely didn't disappoint. It's fun. I like it a lot.
What were you concerned most about?
Mock trial, for sure. I mean, yeah, it's not exactly something that I enjoy very much, but I think I'll enjoy it once it's over and I have all the feeling of success and stuff like that. But until that time, yeah,
Why don't you enjoy it though?
Well, I mean, the workload is a lot. So that's never really the funnest thing. But then I'm also kind of nervous to get up and like speak in front of a lot of people. But the main thing that worries me is like when I'm speaking, I have to kind of adjust to whatever the other person's saying because it's not like a memorized thing. I don't just memorize what I'm going to say and then say it. Like depending on what the other people say, I have to then say a certain thing to counteract what they say. It's just
Yeah.
kind of nerve wracking.
Where have you seen your brother do that recently though?
Oh yeah, he did that in his challenge 2 debate that he had. Was it last week?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. The rebuttals that they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to come up with them on the spot. So
Yeah. So do you think that
definitely
mock
important.
trial probably helped him
Yeah.
setting up? Yeah, I think so too. Okay. Let's see. What is your most favorite thing about Challenge B? Is it short story?
Yeah, short story is really fun. I also didn't really expect it, but this book, Defeating Darwinism, I actually really enjoyed this because the guy who writes it, Philip E. Johnson, he has a very interesting perspective on a lot of different things. And the thing about Defeating Darwinism is it doesn't give you all of the stuff that like if we live in Kentucky, really close to the Creation Museum and the Ark. So I've been there multiple times, and it always gives you the ideas of what to believe, and then gives like quotes on the Bible and references to that kind of thing, and proves how that actually is the correct answer to how the world came about. But then this thing doesn't actually necessarily prove Christianity, but it does defeat Darwinism, as the title goes. And so it gives a lot of scientific evidence and philosophy evidence, like against Darwinism, instead of using the Bible as a source, because people who believe in Darwinism, you usually haven't read the Bible, so obviously they don't use that as a credible source. So it uh, proves how Darwinism is not reliable on grounds that you don't really think about if you're like a grown up church Christian.
Yeah.
It's just kind of cool.
Yeah. I think one thing Nolan said that I thought was cool the other day, we were talking about he was actually working through his math, and he was saying like I know that this is right, like I know the answer is right, but I don't know why it's right. And so we sat down and like kind of worked through it. Well, then later, about an hour or so later, we were down talking about his defeating Darwinism, and he was making the connection that he said like I believe creationism and I believe what I've learned from you guys from church and from what the Bible says, but he was like this book has helped me understand more why I believe it. And so I think that was a cool thing. All right, what advice would you give to a Challenge A student or parent, Nolan?
Well, flashcards. Something that I was not really expecting would help me out that much, because you do flashcards in Latin, whether you write your own or you have them pre-bought. The Latin flashcards for all the words that you're supposed to learn are extremely helpful, but not just in Latin. I've realized I write my own flashcards, but in every single subject, pretty much, you can use flashcards. And like for example, in Challenge A, I would like draw a country and then put the name on the back. Or like sometimes if you do like capitals, you'd write the country and then the capital on the back. That's like a Challenge A example. For Challenge B, I mean, I use it for logic all the time because logic's kind of difficult to remember. They have a lot of rules and charts and appendices to memorize.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, flashcards really help, and my brain accepts flashcards very well.
Your
So
brain
yes,
accepts.
easy for me to memorize using flashcards.
Oh.
And then Latin charts. I did not like them. I don't like them. I still don't like them. They're not something I enjoy doing, but I didn't realize how important they were in Challenge A because I was in Challenge A and you didn't use all of the ones that they have you memorize until Challenge B and even in later years. And now I'm here in Challenge B wishing that I would have done the charts more diligently back in Challenge A because it would have helped out a lot. But, I can't change that. So now I just have to do a lot of catch up work on Latin charts. But yeah, that's pretty much all I would say to them.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay, thank you so much for that. All right, we're gonna everybody will get a chance to ask some questions from Jamie and her son in just a little bit. I'm just gonna run through the book rep part of things. I've gotten a few texts that you're not able to see slides. We're not showing a whole lot, so you're not missing out on much. So I'm gonna just share my screen for the bookstore right now. And sometimes the slides don't come back on. So there's not a ton in these slides. They're mostly to help Jamie and I keep track of where we are. So you're not missing out. Okay, so we're going to stop this slide. This is where I get a little clunky with the tech. So we are going to share my screen over here instead. All right, did everybody's screen change over to a catalog? A picture of the online catalog? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, I love these little thumbs ups and claps and all that. It's so helpful to me on my end because when I do this, I can no longer see everybody's faces as much. You might see me turn and look at my side screen to kind of double check things, the chat and all of that. But I kind of become blind once I start sharing a screen. All right, so what I was going to show you here, this is in the full screen mode. I'm on a teeny tiny little laptop, so it's kind of hard to make things big. But one of the things I wanted to show you is a feature of the online catalog. Is say, for example, if I click on Ken Sande's Peacemaker here, if you scroll down, you can see that there is a YouTube video. Lee Bortons does this series called Words Aptly Spoken, which is named after the literature series that we do. But they sit there and she has a group of people. It's usually 4 people on the call. It's usually the same 4, but they switch it up every once in a while. The gentleman who's on the call, he's the one that wrote the new philosophy book that's in Challenge 3, I believe. But they discuss the book, the basic content. It's about an hour long. So sometimes I listen to these for a number of the subjects, especially in these parent resources. I listen to that kind of to get the gist of it and to decide whether I want to invest in that or if I'm just good, kind of like getting the cliff notes essentially. But when it comes to parent resources, first off, today and tomorrow, I think, are the last days that we're doing the parent resources sale. Just so you guys are aware of that, it's like 25% off parent resources, which we're now calling Cultivating Christian Leaders here. But I would strongly recommend everybody reading The Conversation. I'm assuming everybody's read the core, the question, and then hopefully, if you've read The Conversation, that's great. But really reading these 3 core books is very, very helpful for understanding everything. And I know I've got a lot of veterans on here, but I'm always surprised when you encounter somebody and you're like, oh, hey, you really do have to go back and read the question. It really is helpful. And The Conversation is another good one. So getting down into, so Jamie covered so many of these things. She made my job super easy. Math map, let's go back here. Sorry, I'm clunky. So the math map monomials, I'll show you that in a second when I turn off the screen share. Defeating Darwinism, this is another one. Oh no, they don't have the shared video. Let's talk about the introductory logic. I get a lot of questions about whether or not that people need to buy both the parent teacher edition, the student handbook, the text, all those, and the DVD set, because that's a lot of materials there together. Obviously, the student handbook is not optional. But Jamie, what would you say about the teacher edition?
Yeah, I would say yes, you need the teacher edition unless you are a logic master.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah, or unless you're going to go through every single step with your student, then potentially no. But I would say yes, as a mom, you definitely need it. I would say the videos are a must-have for me. For my kids, but I'm saying, and for our family. If you could only afford one, I would say go for the intermediate logic videos. But I think they're both like really, really helpful. He's going to go through each lesson and explain everything. And so it's just faster and easier. And my kids watch it and can do the lesson. And then I can have, kind of like how we do other resources in our homeschool. So yeah, if you've got multiple kids you're homeschooling or multiple jobs, that you're doing, I would say
Mhm.
yes, you want that. Now the test and quiz packet, that would be up to you. They're not going to use that in community. That would
Okay.
be if you wanted to use that for your own personal grading system. So, like
Mhm,
if you
mhm.
wanted to give them a grade or something like that in Challenge B, then But otherwise, I would say that would really just to be to see how they're doing. And if you're on top of it, you're probably going to know how they're doing anyway. So you can kind of assess just from their work in the book how well they're doing. So I would say you wouldn't need that unless you just wanted it. But the teacher's edition definitely, and the videos highly encourage. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And that's kind of how I experienced it because, my oldest went through this and we really found, and I'm just going to tell you guys, the DVDs aren't cheap. If they're 75 for first semester and then 75 for the second semester. So it is one of those things that you're sort of like, oh, really? Like that much? And considering we've had other a lot of people share or communities are able to share the IEW DVDs. So I don't know if you want to get together with some other parents in your community, or so I've seen some communities that buy a set and just keep it at the community, and then people kind of swap them out. I do see that people, and after a while, they get frustrated with moving them around a lot, and so then people end up buying their own. I've just always had our own. We found them to be very valuable, and we're not really the kind that buy the DVDs for everything out there. But yeah, I would say that it is very helpful. And my daughter did go back because you do more logic in later levels as well. She has pulled them back out and rewatched them to help, brush up on them. And then the trivium table, the logic trivium
Krista,
table. Yeah.
hey Krista, the
Yep.
Canon Press also, you can stream for like $8 a month the videos. It's another option. They're the same
Oh,
videos, but you can stream it
okay.
from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So that's an option. Yeah. So then like, yeah, $8 a month if you have like all the different ones. Yeah. So that is another option. Okay. Thank you. Is that Katie?
Yeah.
Was that you, Katie? Yeah. Okay. All right. I thought I recognized your voice. Okay. So then we'll talk about the trivium table. So some people love and hate the trivium tables. In my old communities, we liked the trivium tables for essentials so much that we just like kind of just bought them for everything else as well, because we just liked them so much. And there's some, like I would say, some people think like the music one is not that helpful. Some people love it. Some people hate this one, hate it. This is like a medium. I would say this has like medium usefulness. During the winter break, correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, do they still have to do all this memory work during the winter break where they memorize the truth tables and all these, what are they called? Yeah, truth tables, and then the square of opposition. Is that still
Yeah.
Christmas homework? Yeah.
Yeah.
So with my daughter, because we do a lot of car school, and we do a lot of our family has a lot of doctor's appointments because I have a son in rehab. And then we just, a lot of people are in sports, a lot of people have a lot of clubs, things like that. They're driving all over. We just kind of grab our stack of trivium tables. Like when I'm in a hurry and we're running behind and I haven't made lunch and nuts, what do? I grab a stack of trivium tables. Sometimes I don't even see what they are. And I just grab a bunch, shove them in a bag, and take them to the doctor's office. And then I distribute them when we're in there. And I say, okay, you need to work on, because there's 4 essentials trivium tables, and then there's a number of challenge level ones that are useful for many different levels. So this is one, if I was a challenge beer, this is one that this might live in the car, because sometimes I just stick them in the car and leave them there. So that's something to consider. Ours are super durable. This is my daughter's, and they really hold up. So aside from that, let's go back into the. Okay, so, and then yeah, you covered basically everything. Oh, I did want to talk about Latin Workspace. My daughter didn't care for these, but she had also done Latin through an outside program, so she didn't need as much structure. There are some people I know that are like, oh my goodness, this is such a lifesaver because it trained my child to study Latin appropriately. So kind of like, what Jamie's son was saying is that he really wished he'd like focused on those charts. If you follow the Latin Workspace, it makes you do the charts, and your mom can see, as a mom, you can see whether they're done or not. Whereas for me, with my son who's in challenge A, when he's talking about that, I'm like, oh yeah, we haven't really been focusing as much as I wish on the charts. We have been doing the flashcards really diligently and the translations, but we haven't been doing the charts. And so part of me is like, should I go back and get the Latin workspace? We haven't needed it before, but that kind of gives you a structure of like, you know, it's done and you fill it out. And you as a mom, if your hands are full, you can grab it, look at it, see if it's done or not. So that's just something everybody needs individually to decide on. Latin dictionary, eventually you will want that. You probably like the challenge 2 director that's on these calls and the challenge 3 directors both insist you've got to have a good Latin dictionary, and they both agree this is a good one. I don't know how much you'll use it at B. I think you could probably get away without having it. But you know, eventually you will want that on your plate or on your, you know, on your shelf. So then the last thing I wanted to talk about, because Jamie was so thorough, is this Lost Tools of Writing. This is not something that you're going to necessarily want to buy for this year. But I'm going to share this other screen really quick. Let me talk about a strategy that I've been thinking as a book rep. See if I can get into this. Is this it? All right, do you guys see that? Teaching the Classics, is that hitting your screens? So this is actually done by the Circe Institute, I believe. Yeah, it's Adam and Missy Andrews. If any of you have heard of the 3 Andrews, it's Andrew Pudua, Andrew Kern, and Adam Andrews here. So what this is it is a program, and you see how expensive it is. Don't freak out just yet. This is a curriculum that has a DVD and everything where it walks you through how to analyze any literature that it could be Tale of Peter Rabbit, or it can be Tale of Two Cities. And you as a mom, it's helping you learn to dissect that, see the worldview, and be able to talk intelligently about it and have even Socratic discussions with it, with basically anything that sits in front of you. I did this a number of years ago when I started being a challenge director, because I wanted to be able to talk about the books a little bit better with my students, but it's also been very helpful at home. Like, we analyze Super Bowl commercials. We talk about the story that's being told when we watch an old Disney movie versus a modern Disney movie. And so what they do up in Ohio is during the summer, they do kind of like little workshops, or sometimes they do it in the fall. They do these little workshops where a director will buy the DVD set, and then they do it as a mini practicum. They do it as a one-day thing using children's books. And then people just get the workbook, which I think is like, I want to say it's like $20. And then everybody gets together, kind of like doing a popcorn and Pudua. But I've seen up in Ohio, because I went up to some of these Ohio events. There were foundations directors, challenge directors, and then a lot of parents that would go. And I've really just heard a lot of good stuff and a lot of good feedback from the communities that have done this. They really appreciate that the parents are able to go home and have more rich and meaningful discussions about all the challenge literature, and even about the younger levels as they're going through what are they called, the Copper Lodge books and such. So I just wanted to highlight that really quick. I think it's an underutilized resource. Since I have so many directors on this call, I thought I'd put that little little bug in your mind to think about. All right, so aside from that, that's basically all I have for the catalog. We can do parent question answer now. If anybody has any questions about materials for Jamie or for me. Nolan, are you up for questions?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Sometimes it's interesting when there's 1 or 2 people on the call, they're like over talking each other, I've noticed. But if there's 20 people on the call, everybody's like scared to jump out and say anything and interrupt each other. I'll ask you, Nolan, what's been your favorite of the exposition books so far, including Challenge A? If you have Challenge A books and Challenge B, the literature.
That's a hard one. There's so many good ones. I think my favorite one in Challenge A, we read a book called The Bronze Bow. I loved that book. I really liked that book.
Okay.
I think that one has to be my favorite, but it's a close run race for a lot of other books that I've read because they're all really good.
Here's the
Now,
well,
why did you like that one so much?
Well, I mean, I feel like I can kind of relate to the main character a lot. He doesn't.
Oh, really? He's an interesting
control-
character.
Yeah, he doesn't really have a good control of his temper very well, and I struggle with that a little bit.
Oh,
But also,
okay.
he just starts off like kind of wrestling with himself in these a lot of different ways, and then he moves on to like the mid part of the book where he's trying to raise up the like probably everybody here's ready. There's like trying to raise up like the army against the Romans, and he keeps kind of asking this question, and he centers like the rebellion against like this verse is like he trains my hands for war so that my arms may bend a bow of bronze. And then
Okay.
the very like near the end of the book, like one of the last lines was like he asks himself, is it possible only love could bend a bow of bronze? And it's just really powerful and interesting because he does like this full switch, and the very last sentence of the book, he's just come so far, and the character development that is shown is just amazing. I really like it.
All right.
It's also interesting all the way
And
through.
what were you going to say, Jamie? You were going to say
Oh,
something, and I jumped in with my.
yeah, no, it's okay. I was going to say that I think probably one of my favorite ones that they read in Challenge B is The Hiding Place. And if you've never read it, I definitely would read it. That's Corey ten Boom's story. I
Mhm.
definitely would read it with your student because there's a lot of really interesting questions that come up and just some rich conversations that can be had with your students surrounding that book. The other thing I would say, this is just another mom tip, is the Phantom Toll Booth, which is the very first book they read in Challenge B. That
Okay.
really needs to be read on like book wise, like handheld book, because Nolan is an audiobook guy, which is totally fine, and I'm happy with that. But I forced him to read the Phantom Toll Booth in actual book form because of the play on words. They'll miss a lot of that because they won't understand how the person is saying it and how it's being spelled in the book. So if they're only
Oh,
listening to it, they don't get it.
we'll miss it. I
They
see.
miss a lot of the humor and a lot of the play on words that the author is doing. So I'm great as a director and definitely as a mom. I'm great with all my students doing audiobooks for every book except for that one. They need to read
Okay.
that one because otherwise they're going to miss a lot. And it's hilarious and it's really
It's
good.
really
Okay.
So they'll miss a lot if they don't read that like actual book.
Okay.
So
I didn't
get
think
that
about that, but you're right. Yeah, that is a good tip. So, yeah, I think I listened to the audio. So when I was directing Challenge B, I was actually living in the hospital with my son that got sick. And so I did a ton of audio while he was like on a hospital, he's on a hospital mat and I've got my earbuds in. And I found that I wasn't catching up on some things. And my daughter started pointing to her book and I'd forgotten all about that. I'm like, oh, I can't just do the audio on all this. So you're right. I'm glad you brought
Yeah,
that up.
it doesn't make sense. It's like, why is that funny? Well, it's funny because of the way the author's, the words he's using. It looks a little different than, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Melissa just, what did she just say? It says, I use the audio with the physical book. There are lots of characters, so sometimes having different voices helped. Yeah, so I can see how, because the audio version I had, it was very rich with voices and it was a lot of fun. But I do see that like having the physical book there were things I missed, not actually seeing the book. So
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Melissa. That's good to have them do both. I've heard that also helps with reading comprehension. I've read that, that it can help if you do the physical book.
And somebody said there's an old cartoon because this book is from I think the 70s or something. Somebody said there was a cartoon that was kind of similar. I think they said it was the same artist that did the old Chronicles of Narnia cartoon. I haven't seen it, but some of the moms had told me that. So, all right. Well, does anybody else have any questions? Just me.
We answered all your questions. I'm so happy.
I know. Oh yes, I was going to get to monomials. Thank you, Amy. Okay. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. You have to come to the Math Map events. Those are coming up. But so this is like what one of the booklets look like. Amy, I forget because I wasn't taking notes. Have you done Challenge A with your students? Okay. So I handed this to my son, and I should have grabbed both booklets together so you could compare a lot side by side. But you will find, so this is week 19. I don't know if you guys, I think week 19 is next week for us. But you'll see the charts in here, and you're not going to be able to see on my camera. But the charts are they're identical for the first 2-page spread as what they are in the complex books. They only get a little bit more complicated. It's just everything is added just a tiny bit more than what they did last year. So they're going to see a lot of familiar. My son already looked at some of this because he was a little like, oh, it's going to get even harder. When I say even harder, he's actually really enjoying it. And he's going to come to the Math Map events and talk and like give his perspective as a student. And I think he'll be on the Challenge A call too, for anybody who wants to hear his perspective on Math Map. But he was like, oh, okay, this isn't like that much more. It's just building on it a little bit. And we've used the fractions level sometimes. Like if he was struggling with a section, we've gone to fractions, looked at that, and then he's able to tackle the next. And it seems he's saying that he wants to keep his complex books handy for when he does monomials, almost like an answer key. But that's about all I can really say right now about monomials without having you in person and kind of showing you things better. But there will be a Math Map event. Jamie, do we have one set for your area yet? Was it, did we say the 10th?
We did. I'm pretty sure it was April 10th. I said if you search, I don't know, it's in my zip code. So you may have to search like zip codes for Lexington to see it. Cause you know how sometimes if you're far away from Lexington, it may not show up. But yeah, we're doing that Math Map at Home event in Lexington, and anybody's welcome to come that would like to. Yeah, that's in April 10th. Yeah.
And then I know there's another one on the 12th in Valerie French's area up but in the Cincinnati area in northern Kentucky. So there's one on the 10th, one on the 12th. There's a number of them that are going to be out west. I think the first one is on March 29th. And I think there's another, I want to say the 24th. So there is going to be a big blitz of these. Do make sure you get on the calendar for those, but we will do some more probably in the fall, but not as many. It's mostly for the parents that couldn't make the spring ones. So there will be a lot more information at those about monomials and complex and all the lower levels as well. So,
Krista, I'm sorry.
Explain the discount code. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was just going to ask. You said the charts are different for each level?
No, the charts are the same for each level.
Okay.
But then
what did you say? It gets a little.
The frames, what they call the frames, it's like the stuff that they're actually working on in each one of these. They call these little things, I don't know if you can see, this would be a frame, this would be a frame, all these things with these separate highlighted bars. The frame areas get a little more complicated, but it's not a lot. And you can go back, you will see, it's interesting. I have a 7-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 13-year-old working through Math Map at various levels. And our frames, actually, like all the different frames, they can look at each other's frames, and they are the same in all their booklets on the way they're organized. And then there's just different. So like, let me think. So my 7-year-old, he might be tracing the definition of what naturals means. But then my fractions son, he has to figure out which ones are naturals and which ones aren't naturals. And first it'll say, it'll kind of quiz, it'll be a fill in the blank for the definition of naturals. So he can look over at his brothers and see, oh yeah, he's tracing the definition. So I can use that to fill in those blanks and then identify which one of these are naturals. Then my challenge A student who's in complex, he isn't given blanks to fill out, or he has like more blanks that he has to fill out. And then his set of numbers to pick from is a lot more complicated, and he has to figure out which ones are the naturals from that. So it's just like you're doing the same thing, just more complicated, if that makes sense. It just gets a little more age appropriate. So I don't know if that kind of helps you get a picture of it. But when I'm showing you in person at one of the Math Map events, I think that'll help a lot. So Okay, so explaining the discount code. So if you see here, because I have two screens here, so I have to turn away from everyone. So if you see a discount code for CC Bookstore, so that is, if you go ahead, you could take a screenshot of this. I don't know if everybody knows how to do that, but if you take a screenshot of this, basically if you buy one of the CCL, that's the that's the Cultivating Christian Leaders books, what we used to call parent resources. If you have one of those in your cart up through March 31st, you'll get $10 off. I do also want to cover other discounts in the bookstore because all that's changing. Most of you are directors, so you probably heard about it, but in case you haven't, but you do want to disseminate this information to your communities too, because not everybody will look at all their emails and see this. But when you go into the bookstore, right now there's a pop-up that comes up and it prompts you to connect your CC Connected account with your bookstore account. And I think if you go into CC Connected, no, I don't think it does prompt you for that. It's just when you go to the bookstore. So you need to connect those two. And when you click on the link, it'll take you to your CC Connected account. You sign in and then they're automatically connected. The reason why that's important is because they are changing the way a number of the discounts work and shipping works. If you are enrolled in a community, which will be shown through CC Connected, like that's what's going to verify it for the bookstore. If you're enrolled in a community, you automatically get, it used to be you had to spend $250 to get free shipping. Does everybody remember that? Well, they've changed it to $50. You just have $50 in your cart to get free shipping. It's still not as good as Amazon, but we're kind of doing what we can, because we don't have robots working in our warehouse. But if you purchase $50 worth of content, you get free shipping. Additionally, unfortunately, prices are going up just like they are everywhere for everything. And so CC is having to raise their bookstore prices, but if you are enrolled in a CC community and it's linked through CC Connected like that to verify, they're keeping those prices the exact same. So you essentially works out like a 15% discount. I think next year it'll end up being closer to like a 20% discount. But so when you go into the bookstore, you're going to see all the prices going up here pretty soon. But if your account is linked, you'll see it's the exact same. And so that's kind of to protect our members from inflation that's going on while letting people who are outside of CC who are buying through our bookstore kind of ease them into that, if that makes sense. So you just need to be sure. And I don't think those necessarily show until you're doing your checkout process, kind of like when you go to the grocery store, you have to hit in your phone number before you get your discounts and hit pay. And then all of a sudden all your discounts show up. So when you do that, I gotta think there's something else. Okay, so you'll see a thing in the bookstore. It says your discounts. And so you need to make sure that each one of your shipping discount is listed. This coupon code, anytime you guys talk to me, I should have a coupon code to give you. It's just one of the perks of talking to a book rep. And it'll be a different one for every quarter. And then the current sale discount. So you'll need to make sure all three of those discounts are on. And then there is a MathMap sale that's going to be very short, but very beneficial in April. So I don't know the exact dates for that yet, but I think it's either 20 or 25% off for MathMap. So keep your eye on that because MathMap is a little bit of a, you want to have a sale on that one whenever you can. But a lot of people last year missed it and we're all panicking. And so I'm just warning you now, watch out for the discount in April for that. So aside from that, let me see if I need to hit another slide here. I did have one other.
Celeste is asking a question in the chat, so you can do that while I'm answering that. Celeste, I hope I'm saying your name right. You'll need to Discovering Adamus because that's a consumable workbook. It's a fill in the blank. So you would want 2 of those. They also are going to they'll do some like coloring of charts and things like that. I would say the American Experience, you could probably get away with just having 1. They just have to read on a different day. I didn't let my boys write in this particular one. So yeah, you'd be fine with just 1 for this that they could share. Defeating Darwinism, again, it kind of depends on your goals for your student. If the goals in the guide would say that it's not only just us understanding and learning difference between creationism and evolution, but it's also how to annotate. And so that, and again, having a challenge 2 student, I can tell you how much this has helped him learning this, and being eased into it in challenge B has helped him in challenge 1 and challenge 2. So if they're going to annotate everything, they're going to each need their own. But again, if that maybe is it, maybe if your goal, if you're scaling, I don't know your students, but if you did need to scale and your goal was really just them to kind of read this and you guys have discussions about it and stuff like that, then that would be a different purpose for it, if that makes sense. Hopefully that answers.
I would second that highlighting method as being super critical. I would say that it's a good book to have. You could listen to it on audio though anytime, but so CC, sometimes we don't just pick our books to learn the content in the books. We learn like it's like a double thing. We're also learning a process of learning. And I would say, yeah, you could watch a million videos about Darwinism, but even if you want to take Tale of Peter Rabbit and learn how to annotate it, that is really, it's an important skill to have. So
yeah,
my daughter's still in college. That's crazy.
Yeah, and it helps too, because like I'm just now looking at Nolan's right here, like he underlined something and then he wrote, so would it be fair to say that the only evidence for evolution is its definition and changing of species? Talk about this in community. And then he has a highlight, Jonathan. So Jonathan is one of his classmates. So I don't know why he said that, because he left. But anyway, you know, they're making little notes because this is what they're using to discuss in community, is just this, like they're not writing a paper, they're not, so that if the annotation also comes in handy to enrich the community conversation.
Yeah, and some students, like my daughter, I got a lot of pushback, but now she's so grateful for having learned that process. So, all right, says, will Challenge B directors get a free copy of the math map like last year? I don't know that one. That's going to be an LR question. Do you know the answer to that, Jamie?
I want to say, I don't want to say. I plead the fifth. If I'm still being recorded, I want to say that they do. But
I don't want to promise.
I do. But please don't quote me on that. I know that if once you have all of the training has started rolling out this past week for Challenge B. So tutors and Challenge A. So once you're enrolled, once you are signed, licensed, and everything is connected through your LR to CC connected, you're going to start getting the emails from the Math Map team. I know my Challenge A director has already scheduled her Math Map training. So all of that stuff that they did for Challenge A, if you were a Challenge A director this past year, they're going to do that again for Challenge B directors. And I want to say that they are going to, but again, don't come at me if they don't. I think
right. Yeah. I think they're not doing that for Challenge A directors though, for this coming year. So I think we're expecting pushback on that, but it really is the process of, we're trying to make it easier on people who are launching the brand new program. So in a way, parents a lot of people are like, why do we have to be the ones who have to, break the mold on this? And it's like, well, but we're also trying to offer some like advantages to, help you guys out. So, anyway, we've been really happy with it. So, and about Louisville, no, who is your LR? Because I've been hounding them. Haley Littles and Yvette, I'm hounding them. Like, let's pick a date. Yeah. So get after. She and I were talking a little bit, but I really need to nail them down. So, but here I'm local in Louisville too, so it's not like I have to plan. I can do a number of smaller events if necessary. It is best to do one big event though, because you do need a mixture of parents to actually play parent role with each other. So I don't know, but get with your LR. I'm gonna get. That's gonna come back to bite me for having said that, isn't it?
Hey, and also Celeste, sorry, I was just looking through my notes. I hope you're still on here. I would say they probably also need their own mock trial notebook. Because that, while it's not necessarily consumable, all of the work that they're going to do is made to like mark in those books. So unless they're like they get along way better than my boys and can share something they're both writing in, they're going to both need a mock trial notebook too. Because it leans more toward a consumable. Like I couldn't buy, even though it was the same case, Nolan couldn't use Tucker's. My second son couldn't use my first son's because he had marked all in it and changed stuff and written the timeline. And so they're going to both need that too.
All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, and then if there's no other questions, I have to figure out how to stop the recording. How does that work? There we go. All right.